whispers it. It's like, ooh.
All right, now we're back, and it's COMP3025, and it's the winter 2016 semester, week 6, lesson 6, part 3 of our broadcast. Last time when we were doing our little movie, we talked about adding a button, a simple, silly button, and a silly label, and doing some linking. We also talked about setting up dimensions as a resource, as well as strings and the value in doing that. All right, I want to add another control now. We've talked about 2 controls. One of them is a welcome label, and one of them is a click me button. But I want to create something else. I want to create a text box. The first text box I want to create, when you click on the click me button, it's going to take the text from the text box this time, whatever that text is that the user types in, and replace the labels text, the welcome text, with whatever the user types in, okay? When I click the button. Okay, let's do it this way. And then the next one I'm going to do after that is, as the user enters his data, it's going to update the label dynamically, like almost like a double binding, all right? Let's try this one thing step at a time. So first, I want to add in another control called, I'm just going to pull these things down a little bit, all right? I want to create another control in here, right? I'm just going to move this over here for a second. I'm going to drag a control onto the screen that is a text view, but it's an edit text is what it's called. Now notice under here they have text fields. There's plain text, person name, password. Why are they called different things? Anybody have an idea? This is a very simple question, by the way.
They follow a specific format.
Yes. What's the other reason?
The keyboard
that it brings up is really important. So if I click in a password, the keyboard and the way it looks, the format that you're talking about is what happens. If I click email, it'll bring up the email capable keyboard with the @ sign, right? So that's where it is. So we want to just put plain text for now and just drag and drop that into our object here. Now here's my edit text, and I want to put it I want to rejig my layout. Okay, so hey, tell me what's going on. How come my relative layout isn't allowing me to rejig everything, right? Notice that there's different drag and drop controls, right? So notice it's a horizontal line, and then there's no action bar as a theme, but I did it before, and I was dragging and dropping. What could be the problem now? Anybody have an idea? Is yours allow you to drag and drop multiple things? So what happened? How come my layout doesn't allow me to do that? I got to sync again. All right, so that means you're talking about dragging, like basically cutting this out and putting it back up is what you're saying, right? I did, but let's just do it this way first. Let me just double-click Content Main. And notice how you're absolutely right, because see how my content main is like this? I've got rendering problems because of my version, right? If I go to API 22, it's going to try and re-render the screen, but again, from here to there, right, I'm not able to see my screen, and as a result, I can't do my drag and drop. I'm showing you this on purpose, by the way, because we have issues, we have problems, right? So how do I fix my problem? So let's just close my application, like we said. I'm leaving it at API 22, by the way. As I close my application and get back into it, just by opening it up again. There it is. Now I can see that I've moved this up, which I wanted to, and I'm going to drag and drop. I'm going to drag and drop my edit text. Where is it? It's right here. It's way down here. It's hard for you to see, but I'm going to open this up to make it larger and drag this whole edit text up to the middle somewhere. Here's my edit text. But notice how it closes up again, right? Why does it close up? There's nothing inside of it. So I got to declare a dimension for my edit text, right? I'm going to zoom in here so you can see a little bit more. So there it is. See how it is. It's just this little thing here. There's nothing in there in my edit text, and I haven't declared a dimension. Even if I make this larger like this, notice it'll mess up your layout, and you don't want to do that, right? So a couple things to do. We want to, by the way, notice that from a relative layout perspective, when I drag and drop my edit text, I actually change the positioning here as well. And you can do that by dragging it around here in the outliner, in the component tree. That's all I've done. By dragging it around, you can change the order of all these objects as they get added into your view, right? And by the way, when the view renders, whatever's here in the component tree gets added in order. And that sometimes is important in terms of layering. Okay. So I want to change this thing to something else. So let's go back into my ID. That's the first thing I want to try and do. One step at a time, right? So here's my ID. It's called edit text. That doesn't make any sense. this is where I'm going to put in user input. So I'm going to say user input text box or something like that. So user input text box, which makes sense to me, right? Now you can make them as long as you want, but it makes sense to name them. Okay, 1, 2. I want to give this a certain width, right? Now it's not a height. It's not a height default. It's a width default, right? And notice that I have things like if I go here, if I go through here, I have a text size, and I also have down here on the bottom width, a width property that I can assign. Again, I don't recommend you assign it by hard coding it down here at all, right? I recommend that you create a size class for it as well. So I'm going to click on these ellipses this time, click on new resource, go to new dimension value, and add a new width. So we're going to call this edit text width. That's my resource. And I want this thing to be at least, yes? From a localization perspective, if I'm going to change the language type, right? If I hard code the values, then I'd have to change everything in my app, right? If I just change it to one place, then they all change everywhere else. This one. And the same thing goes for my dimensions. If I hard code the value, and if I'm moving my app from one type of device to another, and let's say I want to upgrade to a new version or whatever, a version that's compatible with another version of the device, a tablet, let's say, I'd have to change or modify my DP sometimes. And I do it easier here. Okay, so edit text width, as an example, is I'm going to change this resource value. Let's make it 40 pixels for now, or 40 dp, and see what that looks like. Click OK. Not too big, right? That's not anywhere big enough at all. And it's probably going to be, remember what the device width is, probably around 320 pixels or thereabout, right? Something like that. So you got to figure that this is got to be a lot larger than that. So probably in the realm of, and if you want to notice what it is, I can actually pull this over. And as I pull, sometimes it'll tell you the width, how wide it is, this thing, right? It'll actually kind of pull out when you start moving it over. But I'm guessing that it's probably going to be something like 200. And notice that I can double click on this thing, and instead of my edit text width being 40, I can make it 200 right here, or I can modify the value in the other place. Okay, go back to this. Now it's the right size. That's about around the size that I want it to be. Okay, let's make it in the middle. So I'm just going to drag it in the middle of my field here, right? So welcome, and here's this text value that the user is going to enter in, right? Okay, cool. So the user has a place to enter his stuff. I need to make a connection to it as well, because I've got a new object that I want to connect to in my Java, right? So this is step 1. Again, let's just do the same thing again. Step 1, I want to bind the object. I want to actually create a container for the object. So private, and this is an edit text, right? So if I go edit text, it'll come up as the type, and then we're going to say we're going to call it underscore user input. What do they call it? User input something or another. Text box. Thank you. Text box. Just so I know what it is. You can make it whatever you like here. All right, cool. So I've got a reference to this, right? Now let's make a reference to the object down here. I'm going to put it between my welcome label and my click me button, just because that's how my view is laid out, right? Again, we're talking about best practices. So create a reference to the edit text control. Edit text means I can edit the text. That's why it's called that. All right. And then in here, I'm going to go this dot underscore user input text box, right? And again, I'm going to cast it as an edit text. And I'm going to say find view by ID r.id dot, and then I'm going to choose that user input text box. And I've got a reference, a binding from my user input text box, what I've named, to my actual class. Right? That's cool. So I've got a bind. Now I can do stuff with it. So here's what I want to do now. I want to change my click me button set on click listener, this one here. What I want to do instead of doing this welcome set text, is whenever I click my button, I want to take the user input, whatever is in there, even if it's blank, right, for now, and change my my welcome label to something else. So welcome label.setText can stay here. How do I get the value from the input? And what would you guess that would be? Get text. It's pretty simple, right? So I'm going to go in here and replace this value without creating an extra variable. I'm just going to say underscore user input text box dot get text, and that's enough. So get text is the getter, set text is the setter, and we're going to use the getter method of the edit text box or edit text, and the output of this, of course, is a string, and it's going to go it's going to go into the parameter for the set text setter. All right, so if everything goes well, I'll save this, and now I'll test my application again. Go back to content main, and I'll test my application and see if it works. Let's test it on Genymotion. Let's see what happens. All right, so here's my player, and I've got my little box here. Now, if I click on this thing, right, there's different ways of, by the way, setting up this thing so it pulls up a keyboard. So, I mean, it's a keyboard. From now, I'm using my own keyboard. You can set that up in your emulator. All right, so for here, I'm going to type in, you know, an example text that will come in, right? And if I click me, it should change this welcome text to example text, right? There it is. Nice and easy, right? So now we have two things. We have an input through a click event handler, and now I have, when I change the value and I click, it takes the value that I have. I'm helping you with your calculator, by the way, to help you do all your calculator stuff, because you need some of this with your calculator when the person enters his values, right? Okay, here's the harder piece, and I want to leave this to you now, right? I want you, this is the effect that I want. I want when the user starts entering his text, his example text is changed, or his welcome box is changed automatically as he's typing, all right? How do I do that? And do I need another kind of event handler for that? All right, so let's see if you can figure it out. I'll give you a couple minutes to figure it out. So you know what I'm saying. You know what I want, right?
Yeah.
So as I type, so just like I typed the example text, right? As I type the example text, select word, edit text. There we go. As I type the example text, as I start typing here, this label starts changing automatically. That's what I want, right? How do I do that? And is it even possible? Okay. I like someone says it's possible. I like that. That's good.
Go back to your code, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that right now.
Green.
What's your name?
References. Sorry, give me 1 second. Editor. Colors and fonts. So I'm just gonna make my font size a little bit bigger for you guys to see that. Font size 16. Darkula. Yeah, I don't want to use that.
Yeah.
I think you have to save as your own and then use that one.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
So back to font, rework. That's just for constant.
Yep.
Try to save as. And then,
That might be better for you guys. That's why I did it, so you can see the code a little bit more. And consoles is a very simple way of looking at it, right? So,
Is there a way for this to just put the
event listener on? Yeah, there it is. Like, for example, now that I know that, here's the one thing I want to show you, right? I've cast this edit text, right? It's as an edit text, which means user input text box has all the methods that are attached to it. So does it have a set on-click listener? It may not. Maybe something else. So let's check that out. So I won't keep you in suspense too much. So I'm going to just put it under here. Right? So I'm going to say this dot underscore user input text box, right? Dot, and if I try and do set on-click listener, I can do that. Or what are the other ones, right? Set hover listener, set key listener, set. So that's one. Key listener might be the one. Set on touch listener, right? Over scroll mode, top clip, you know, focus, show soft input on focus, all kinds of stuff, right?
In Expo in Visual Studio, if you hover over, let's say, on the listener, it'll pull up a little dialogue saying, this is what it does. Just a basic.
Right, and I believe,
That's not on by default.
yeah, I was going to say, is that an IntelliJ thing?
Yeah, it's not on by default.
But on-click listener, this on-click listener class, right? You're clicking onto it, right? That's when I'm actually tapping an object, right? When I'm tapping it. The on-click listener actually comes from before Android. And remember, Android is a derived application operating system, right? The platform has come from somewhere else. It didn't come from it wasn't built up by itself, right? So on-click listener came from somewhere else. So what is this on-click listener? If I use the same thing, if I go set on-click listener, will that solve my problem, right? Because then I would do something like new view dot, like we did before. There's on-click listener, and what else is there for a view dot something or another, right? On touch listener, on hover listener, on application, on these other ones, on create context, and different things. So if I do on-click listener again, right? So undo. So new view dot on click listener. That's the one I want. And then in here I'm going to do a new view dot. Sorry, that's not what I wanted. I want to do one of these, and I want to do not override, just like we did before, with a public void. If I do the same thing. Now, there's on click, but what other on events do I have? If I press Control Space, do I have any other on events? Can I choose to see, a suggestion of them? And what would I have to do here if I want to do as I type, I want to change my text? What I want to do? I want to look at the API documentation. That's what I would be. It was what I would be prone to do. So I'm asking you to do something that's not something that we've seen so far, right? So I want to do like an on change event is what I want to try and do. How do I do an on change for an edit text? So I would search that up. And Google is brilliant at doing that stuff. So I would say on change for edit text Android. Here's the on change listener, and let's see if there's anything like that. And it gives you a great example of that. It probably would. So your edit text, add text change listener is the one we want, not the add the other one that we had before with a new text watcher option, and that's a little bit more difficult to do, right? Because that's still an anonymous in a class, the text watcher class, and after the text is changed, do your editable text. All right, so let's check this out and see. And this is there's actually 3 more that come in before the text is changed and on text change. So there's 3 different kinds of events that come into it, and we want to basically override each one of these. All right, so let's go back and modify our text to meet that. So it's not a set on click listener, because that doesn't make any sense. That's what I said. I was pretty sure that was wrong. Right? That one worked. So it's this one. It's add text change listener, which is kind of something else. Add text change listener, right? And the add text change listener, we need a now it says a new watcher, right? Which is what's going to happen here. Next, new text watcher, right? So I'll say new watcher, right? And it adds in the overrides. Those are all the overrides it adds in. So I don't want to think before text change. I don't care about that one. We'll leave these overrides blank, right? The add override means you can override it. I don't have to override it. It's not a must override. It's just if I want to override it, it's an abstract method that's part of the text watcher class, and I can choose to override it or not, right? On text changed, as I change my text, that's what this is saying. I want to update my object, right? So I want to do one of these. I want to say, well, welcome label set text. I want to do the same thing. As I change it, whatever I change it to, I want to modify it. So let's try this out. I'm going to say, I'm still going to access my welcome label, right? Dot set text. And what I want to do is I want to use the get text method again. So I'm going to say whatever the text box is, the user input text box dot set text. Oh, the other way around. Sorry. Okay. Get text. Thank you. All right. So that's what it's going to do. So what this is going to do is going to say every time the text is changed, reset up the text with whatever I get from the text box. So that should work, right? Let's see. Save it. And I'm going to go back to my view. And I'm going to run it. And let's see if it works. Okay. We are back. So if I start typing, my expectation is that it'll change, right? So changing. Right? If I erase and I say hello, hello world, right? It's going to do that too. So all the event types, there's different event types for what you want to do. So as I type, right? As I type this in, double binding, right? Here's my new text. And it'll keep doing. It'll keep filling this space up with information. So I click the click me button now. That doesn't do anything. So what if I want to reset my text back to what it was, and I want to access my resource, which is the @string resource that I used before, right? How do I do that? How do I access a resource from inside my code? Because I need to do that sometimes. So I'm going to go back here to my code. And in my click me button, down here where it says set text, right? I want to set my text. Every time I click my click me button, it's more of a reset button now. I want to reset my text back to the welcome label that I had before, right? So if a hint, excuse me, for how to do that would be going back to here. If I click on the label itself, notice how it has this @string welcome string that I want to access. And this is kind of the way it would be. We're looking at something like this: @string / welcome string. I want to get that resource, right? Now, if I just put that in here like this, will it work? So if I go @string, right, like I did before, @string, and here's string def from a support. So it's going to be lowercase @string, and then / the resource, which would be the what is it called? Welcome string. See, it doesn't pull it up, right? And so it's something else that goes in here. How do I pull up that resource, right? So let's go back. String resource, Android. There we go, string resource. And it might give us a little bit of a hint of what to do. By my file location, here's my string resource, and how do I use it in code? That's what I want to see, right? So I want to kind of pull up the string resource in code, get string r.string.hello, right? That's it right there. So instead of using a new string, I'm just going to use the getString method that's built into the application and use the